What conspiracy theory is just bullshit? I dunno, this one doesn't make sense to me. Like, okay, the Middle Ages, the historical stuff etc. didn't happen ... but there was a period of time when a certain type of music and art was made, when books were illuminated etc., and they all carry similar themes and cultural murmurs ... So from a pragmatic part, the Middle Ages were the period of time in which those similar artworks were all created. As a result, any historical events that took place during the time tapestries were woven, snail knights fought rabbits in the margins of illuminated manuscripts, and music was mostly choral would have been the history of the Middle Ages ... Shrug, they happened because the art was created. What I really don't get about that conspiracy theory is, why would there be a conspiracy to hide the fact that the Earth is flat? With the other conspiracy theories, at least there's a motive. The theorists say that the government faked 9/11 because they wanted to start wars and needed a justification, or that the government faked the moon landings because they wanted to win the space race, but couldn't actually land on the moon. But why would people lie about the shape of the Earth? Who benefits from that? There is a theory that flat earthers actually have a brain deficiency. They literally are unable to think in 3D. I saw a medical article about this several years ago. The brain scans showed empty areas where there should have been brain material. They are in every other way normal. I wish I could find it. It was at least 10 years ago or more. This is separate from psychiatric or social reasons. In particular, the one about Michelle Obama, literally just created to try and jab at Barack for being some manner of homosexual degenerate, or something. Absolute lunacy. All the ways they've tried to justify that one. A wrinkle in her pants, clearly a bulge, her jawline's a little angular. There's no way a woman could have a manly jaw. Utter hogwash, the whole lot of it, just to debase the black president a certain group of people don't like. That the Clintons have a weather machine and are therefore responsible for every hurricane that hits the U.S. Edit. I'm going to have to clarify. My conspiracy theorist cousin is the one who told me about this, and the theory is that the Clintons A. have a machine that creates hurricanes on demand, and B. they are deliberately creating hurricanes, and C. they are directing these hurricanes toward the USA. I mean, the US Gov does have a weather machine, but it only makes rain in the local area by pumping lots of oxygen and hydrogen into the air and forming clouds till it starts raining. I understand why someone who's a little simple would think they have a weather machine, so they probably make the hurricanes. It has been theorized that in 1969, faking the moon landing footage would have literally been harder than going to the moon with a camera. This logic can be carried over to most mainstream conspiracy theories. Getting enough people in on an inside 9/11 job without a leak, harder than getting a fanatic to hijack a plane. Illuminate, forget about it. The truth is usually boring and simple. An addition to this is that adding links to a conspiracy makes it harder to cover up. You kill someone, then you're the only person who could talk. You get someone to help you. Now there's two. A lot of conspiracies are so massive and complex that not only would it be borderline impossible to ensure nothing goes wrong, but you'd have so many moving cogs that keeping it secret would also be borderline impossible. There's just no realistic way to pull off a conspiracy like 9/11 without the risk of discovery outweighing any potential gain to an astronomical extent. The moon landing is actually one of the few wacky conspiracies that I'm willing to forgive people for. The moon landings were a really amazing feat of engineering that required a ridiculous amount of time, money, material, precision, and luck. I still think it's miraculous that none of the Apollo missions smacked into the moon, as we have lost quite a few autonomous landers that way. Not to say there aren't massive holes in the theory, but I do at least understand why people believe that. It has been theorized that in 1969, faking the moon landing footage would have literally been harder than going to the moon with a camera. That and faking actually sending a rocket, since the USSR monitored our telemetry. They would have loved being able to prove we faked the landing. I remember watching a long YouTube video about this years ago, because why not? It started that midway through her success, she started getting depressed with being famous, and it was showing in the new music she was writing. The record label didn't like her moving in a new direction, plus it was getting harder to get her to agree to do shows and promotions. So they found a girl who looked pretty similar to her, gave her plastic surgery to make them look alike, then would send out the fake Avril to fill in when the real Avril couldn't perform. This went on for a long time, but then the real Avril died, I don't remember how, so they just kept the fake Avril going to cover it up and keep selling albums. It's so weird to me just how damn easy it is to get someone to believe that stuff. Take a blurry pic of someone generic crying. Take a blurry pic of someone else who sorta looks like that person crying. Say they were both at different shootings and boom, there you go, mass shooting is fake. Honestly, I think some people use it as a coping mechanism. They believe it's impossible that someone would just snap and decide to kill a bunch of people in an instant. Remember a few years ago where the cops took the shooter out within 1 minute, but he still managed to kill like 10 people. Even with multiple trained cops on the scene who instantly took out the shooter, almost a dozen people immediately died. Yes, in the absolute grand scheme of things, your chances of dying in a shooting are low, but it's still scary that it could happen. It's easier for people to say it was faked and never happened than it is to accept that it could very well happen with no warning signs. I had one kid at a summer camp who insisted that pigeons were immortal. He said that you never see any pigeon babies, so the ones that are around now must have been around forever and therefore are immortal. He then went on a tangent and said that Queen Elizabeth is so old she must be immortal, so henceforth Queen Elizabeth is a pigeon. He was absolutely fucking nuts, that kid. Also the whole implanted with nanobots and microchips thing. The technologies simply don't exist yet. It's just ideas, papers and decades-long research laboratories. I know governments have secret tech, but most of what theorists claim they have them yet is just fantasy. Couple of decades, maybe. We in 2021 people, we just about got working internet and electric vehicles. That's it. Canon is really weird, right? Like, a Republican candidate blew everyone's mind by actually winning the 2016 election after claiming to be a Democrat in the past. This president then essentially destroys the Republican Party from the inside, pushing his followers and all other Republicans that have no choice but to support him into being anti-vax, anti-science, and pro-fascism. Then by complete coincidence there is a deadly pandemic during this man's presidency, and who is largely the victims of this pandemic right now in this country? Anti-vax anti-science weirdos. The ones not getting killed by COVID are literally drinking horse dewormers. He also convinced thousands of them to separate themselves from their families, got thousands of them to storm the fucking US Capitol and get arrested, and thus not be able to vote Republican in the future. Even now, while Biden is our president, we have hundreds of thousands of bizarre cultists that baselessly accuse every Democrat of being a pedophile while defending Republicans that are literally caught in human trafficking schemes. I'm not suggesting that Donald Trump was a Democrat plant used to destroy the Republican Party from the inside. I am suggesting that the Q people could try to use their brains and come up with theories that make more sense than Orange Man is in control. If someone wanted to depopulate the earth, they could just let the virus run its course and kill people rather than create a vaccine that would prevent people from getting the virus but then kill them 3 months later. It is kind of like saving a person from drowning then throwing them back in the water a few minutes later. There's never been an innocent era, ever. The past can seem innocent because we fundamentally experience the past as children, or because we are told about the past by revisionists that want you to think there was a better, simpler time in the past as a means of exerting social or political control. For example, you know how eating ass has been a staple of transgressive young people humor for a few years now? It's a joke that's older than your grandma's great-great-grandma. Mozart, one of the most widely recognized composers ever, has a song about eating ass. It was written in 1792. The first great work of English, the Canterbury Tales, written in 1400, has a jokes about eating ass. There are ancient texts that predate Jesus about eating ass. To contextualize, Elvis died in 1977. If anything, the late 1970s was one of the least innocent periods of American history. Watergate was a recent memory, as were the atrocities committed in Vietnam. The U.S.'s campaign of brutality and terror in Latin America really picked up with Operation Condor. The modern Christian right began to crystallize. The energy crisis brutalized the economy and was generally seen to be the final nail in the post-WI economic boom. Diplomacy with the USSR tanked and began a new era of hostility. Race relations in the post-civil rights era were still tense, and the war on drugs brutalized poor communities and ethnic enclaves, etc., etc. People were scared and stressed all the time in the late 70s and early 80s. Political unrest, sudden awareness of environmental destruction, and stagflation basically defined the era. Truly a time of malaise and anxiety. Trump as a response to a similar anxiety is not novel. The same phenomenon gave us Reagan, just prior to Bush Sr. Seriously, the parallels are pretty easy to draw. An aging lifelong liberal coastal celebrity gets into politics as a dark horse media-savvy candidate for the right-wing party. Against the odds, the charisma earns them the support of a precarious middle class and the petite bourgeois. Reagan joking that he's old pals with Elvis and can coax him out of seclusion doesn't even seem that off-brand. That Helen Keller is a fraud. It is absolutely dumbfounding for me as I grew up learning about her for stupid people to make it sound like she just never existed to she can see. This woman's hard work for her entire life and career that she made for herself made into a laughingstock that people want to question whether it was true that she was blind and deaf and still went to top university like Cambridge and passed with flying colors. Imagine you making it into the world and creating a name for yourself as an extremely intelligent woman, man, despite your physical disabilities, and people in the future questioning your credibility. Ugh, disgusting. Some conspiracy theorists will refuse to believe what's right in front of them no matter what. But I do think there are some issues with the way her story is taught in schools. Keller was born into considerable wealth, and perhaps even rarer in that time period, had a family that wanted to use that wealth to improve her life and give her opportunities rather than cast her aside and focus on their healthy children. These factors are often straight up left out of the picture in school from my experience. They just make it sound like some ordinary deaf plus blind girl did these things as if just any of them could. And I'm not saying she isn't an absolutely remarkable woman. The opportunities she had were a major factor and rarity, but she still had the drive and wit to capitalize upon them to the fullest. I've heard two plausible root causes for conspiracy theories. Randomness scares us as it strips us of control. When something completely horrific happens, we are faced with a choice. First option, things like this just happen and can happen again at any time. Nothing we can do but hope it doesn't. Second option, someone made it happen, and if we find out who it is we can stop them and it will never happen again. The second option is reassuring to our sense of agency, and it allows us to replace fear of the event with anger at the one that caused it. We don't like feeling inferior. When it comes to people doing things you can't do, you feel better if you can tell yourself that they somehow cheated in order to get what they didn't deserve. Alternatively, you can feel intellectually superior by convincing yourself that you know something about it that most people don't. We are competitive by nature. It is hard to push yourself above others but a lot easier to pull others below yourself. Bottom line, you can trace the desire to believe most conspiracy theories to an envy of success or a fear of random. I have taken a deep dive into the shadow government and such organizations. I discovered that it stems from a misunderstanding of government structure. People found what they think is secret knowledge because it was always available. It looks like something secretive because they only look as far back as the American history, when most of what would lead up to the Americas started hundreds of years earlier in Europe. Well, most of them really, But what stands out for me is birtherism. You're saying that Barack Obama's mother traveled halfway across the world to give birth in a third-world African hospital for why exactly? She had never been to Kenya before and did not have the means to travel there, but she was apparently intent on giving birth there and lying about it to undermine the U.S. Constitution decades later, even though the Constitution only says the president needs to be a natural-born citizen. This means that even if Obama were born in Kenya, he'd still qualify as the son of a U.S. citizen. This makes no sense. It's the Chewbacca defense of conspiracy theories. Whatever your opinion of Barack Obama, he met the legal requirements to be president. Ghosts. Humans have lived for 300k on this earth. I'm guessing in that time literally hundreds of billions have been murdered, killed horribly, never finished their goals, etc. If ghosts existed, they would be fucking everywhere. Also, wouldn't there be tons of caveman ghosts, dog ghosts, dinosaur ghosts? You wouldn't be able to piss without one bothering you. Most of them, conspiracy theorists, are like bad detectives. When solving a case, a good detective looks at the evidence that's at the scene and works with that to figure what unfolded. Bad detectives look at the scene, decide what they think happened, and only pay attention to evidence that supports their story, ignoring other evidence that's there. That's what a lot of conspiracy theorists do. They get tunnel vision. A popular example right now is the COVID vaccines. Instead of thinking like a rational person, oh, there's this contagious virus killing people, so doctors and scientists have worked quickly to find a vaccine to combat the virus so that people can stay safe. That's good. They already have it in their minds that Big Pharma is a government agency employed to control the masses and kill us all. So they see the vaccine and think the government wants to use the so-called vaccine to kill us or implant chips into us, etc. etc. They'll then find one case of someone who had a bad reaction to the vaccine, which is bound to happen and has happened since medicine has been around. Some people have underlying or unknown allergies, healthy issues. That's the gamble we take with trying to combat illnesses, and only focus on that because it proves the idea they have that the vaccine is bad. One guy I am friends with, one FB, posted about one lady dying after getting the vaccine. Meanwhile, myself, my family and all of my friends have had it and we're fine. But of course, he won't listen to that. He only focuses on the one case that supports his crackpot idea. Also, he uses Facebook, has a smartphone, etc. so he's already given up his information for the government to track him, and yet, nothing bad has happened to him. My mom literally this kind of detective. She read one stupid Facebook post about someone dying from the vaccine and she's totally gone with it. I asked for the source and it was one of those overcropped, blurry shared statuses that sucker punch these people. Anyhow, my sister, me, my husband, our friends, her relatives, everyone around her is vaccinated and she is still hesitant. I haven't pushed her into getting the vaccine cause she is stubborn as hell. But by reminding her every day we are all fine, she is slowly coming around to the idea it's safe to get. She definitely should get it too, as she is an immunocompromised person. That's rough. I know how frustrating that must be for you and your family. You probably just want to grab her by the shoulders and scream at her. The tunnel vision conspiracy theorists have is insane. Humans are weird like that. We love to be right. So any crumb of evidence, real or fake, that supports the idea we have is liked, shared and hailed as absolute fact, and everything else is ignored, which is the kind of social media use that I hate. People get injured and die in car accidents all the time, yet, conspiracy theorists who think the world is out to get them don't stop driving cars. They don't share posts on Facebook about car companies trying to kill us all. Mostly, I just think being a conspiracy theorist must be exhausting, to constantly live in fear like that. I'm glad your mother is slowly coming around. I hope she can find peace. That William Barr decided to say there was no election fraud because he was conspiring with liberals. Seriously, who really believes he's got any liberal allies that would convince him to lie and betray his favorite president ever? He'd never do it for them. He hates liberals. This conspiracy makes no sense. Literally, this was in an interview. If you're not sure how absurd it would be for him to be a liberal plant, Attorney General William Barr mounted a partisan attack on the Democratic Party in an interview that aired Sunday, claiming the left believes in tearing down the system and pursues absolute victory as a substitute for religion. These are the people he likes more than Trump? Question mark.